Welcome to that episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Something very unusual today, buried treasure. You know, when you think of buried treasure, everybody thinks of doubloons and gold bars and a pirate's chest and all that kind of stuff. This is what buried treasure looks like now. Does that look like $10 million? This is probably, at least in the last few years, the most famous classic car find. Well, also not a find, it's a barn find, but for some reason the owner, Rudy Klein, who owned a junkyard here in Los Angeles, and it was a true junkyard. It was a junkyard. He would buy all sorts of exotic cars and just put them away. So this is an extremely rare car, 1956 Mercedes-Benz alloy gull wing. That means it's a competition car, and it's not just an alloy body. When the gull wing was being developed, they wanted to make a special sort of racing version. So they made the lightweight aluminum body as well as engine performance was increased a bit. Different suspension, rudge wheels. This has everything that you would expect to find in buried treasure. I mean, it is an unusual car. It's one of only 29 built. Rudy Klein was a character, one of those odd sort of people. You know, I meet this a lot in the car world. I meet guys that want to have a car. He had Porsches, he sold Griffo. I mean, all kinds of exotic cars. He might have driven them once in a while or started them up, but for the most part, again, some were left outside, some were in lean-tos or sheds on his property in sort of a rough area of Los Angeles, downtown. The other odd thing, this car, Rudy saw it in 1976. I think he went to Florida to one of the races, Sebring or something, and he paid $30,000 for it, which is a lot of money in 1976, because in 1969, 1970, when I worked at the Mercedes-Benz dealer, we had a guy trade one of these in. We gave him $5,500 for it. My boss turned around and sold it about 2 weeks later for $7,500 and thought, well, that's it. You will never make that kind of a profit on a used car ever again. It just seemed unbelievable, a $2,000 profit on a car. But he did. By the time the 70s came along, it was $30,000, which is about what it would have cost. You know, when I came to Los Angeles in the early 70s, I went down to a car dealership on Sunset Boulevard, and it was a Ferrari GTO, the GTO 62, in the window. And I gotta go 40 grand, 40 grand. I mean, it was $40,000. Now it's, I think the last one sold for $72 million. But that's what it cost. There were times when these were just old cars. But this was always a desirable car, even from the day it left the factory, even when it got used and abused and then sold. $30,000 in 1976 for this was a lot of money. And, you know, as a barn find, as a piece of buried treasure, it's what everybody's looking for. For some reason, it's probably worth more than if it was restored, because people have their own day. Oh, it's exactly as it left the factory, and it really is. But I think if you, I think you can get to the black paint underneath this. I think the new owner is just going to get it running and restore it and maintain it, which I think is a great thing to do. You know, I grew up in the era of Pebble Beach, where guys had tweezers and they were pulling pieces of grass out between the treads, you know, and everything had to be perfect. I like this new preservation sort of thing, because you get to see and hear the car as it actually existed. But just goes to show you, a lot of this stuff is still out there. This is one of 29 alloy cars. I think this is number 26, if I'm not mistaken. You know, if you're one of those purists and you want to find one, but you want to restore it your way, this is the only one you can do it with, because this has never, ever been restored. That's a 1952. They built, I think, 19 or 20 of those. And that's the only unrestored one of those. It's the only one with bumpers on it and all the original stuff. And when collectors hear about it, you know, boy, they smell blood in the water. So for $10 million, for a lot of times, rich guys buy stuff because they want to have more Ferraris or more Maseratis than anybody. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody scooping this up in an envelope, and here's the actual dirt that was on the Mercedes. For some reason, Rudy sold somebody the bumpers, somebody else a headlight assembly, somebody else bought the shift knob. The rudge wheels, I believe, were heavier than the stock wheels, but the thing was you could change them quicker because of the knockoff, and they were stronger. I believe the red interior, it looks remarkably well, considering that, again, it was not out in the elements, but certainly not preserved. I think this silver could be stripped off and find the original paint underneath, which I think would be an excellent thing to do. I think it looks really, and the dash and the upholstery in remarkable condition, considering, you know, people probably stood on this with their shoes. The guy bought new in '63, parked it in '67, just started drinking, and he passed away a couple of years ago. I just found that out on mine when they had it up in the air and then the axles, everything matched. One thing about Mercedes-Benz, you know, the reason Ferraris cost so much to fix is everything is hand-feddled. You know, I always tell a story about, I was driving through Germany, I was on the Autobahn, driving a Corvette, going 160. And I pull into a German town, and I see a church over there, and a church over there, and each church had a clock. And I got there just about noon, and I saw both of them go, pong, pong, rang 12 times. To me, and I'm a Miura owner, this was the first true supercar. It had fuel injection when only aeroplanes had fuel injection, and only fighter planes had fuel injection, not even passenger planes. Yeah, this is the first automobile with fuel injection, which was just like something from outer space. They tilted over on its side, and it was a 6, because don't forget, Germany was coming out of the war, so they had to make do with what they had. So the fact that they were able to get this with mechanical fuel injection was pretty amazing, and that led to Corvette coming out with fuel injection in '57, and then Pontiac, and you know, all the others as well. So, but yeah, to me, I really consider this the first supercar. And even now, you can drive it and more than keep up with traffic. You know, I'll take mine up to the Crest, Angeles Crest, on Sundays and go for a nice ride. You can see why people went nuts for this, because this was the perfect storm of an old car. This was, I think, probably the biggest car auction of the last few years, because most collections you find are, you know, beautifully preserved. They're in a barn and you can go visit them, and you know, whereas this thing, people have walked around in mud and, you know, in junkyard. My friend Jerry Seinfeld, he bought a beautiful Porsche, a '62. I believe it had less than 500 miles on it. A guy had an accident, and for whatever reason, it was totaled, I think, at the time. But of course, now it wouldn't be considered total because you could fix it. But at the time, it cost more to fix, and the owner just left. And Rudy bought it, and he parked it, and Jerry's going to get it and get it in nice preservation running condition as well. Take a look and let your eyes feast on all the pieces that are still here, like things like this. I really think with some with a couple of soft sponges and some proper cleaning materials, you could get this interior looking nice and new. 73,000 kilometers. My Lamborghini Miura's is in kilometers, and the speedometer goes to 320. This is this piece here. These were bolted on as opposed to being welded on, but in the early cars they were. It would be fun to kind of go through it here and just notice the differences between this sort of racing version and the production version of the car. I wonder if the drums are different, if they're aluminum. It was one of those things that just caught the classic car market, but just what you needed, a real shot in the arm. This auction's coming up with cars that haven't been seen in 60 years. Because just when you think all the good stuff has been discovered, something like this turns up. It's probably the last, I don't know if there are any unaccounted for aluminum cars. See, what the interesting thing is too, everybody in the Gullwing Club, everybody in Mercedes, all the people who document stuff, they knew where this car was. It didn't just, oh my gosh, show up somewhere in a barn. Apparently did some guy who wanted a bumper and some guy who needed a shift knob, so they got it. I didn't get a chance to go to the auction. Yeah, pretty nice. And it bid to 9.6 million, almost $10 million. You figure a restoration, even a preservation, is going to cost you a lot of money. The thing I love about it is the owner, the new owner, you're not going to make any money on this. You do it because you love the car and you want to preserve a piece of history. And I'm glad that there are people that can afford to do that. You know, this will be taken care of. It'll be very gently taken apart, cleaned, everything will be put back on. Maybe we'll get some of this silver paint off of here and we'll see the gleaming black paint underneath. I assume it's probably a lacquer. The red interior is stock. It'll take a few years, but hopefully we'll get it back here again.